cursed a cyclist going through a red light or riding onto a pavement and felt powerless, you might like the sound of a proposal for a new cyclist registration scheme, which would make anyone riding a bike display a registration number, the equivalent of a car number plate, so they can be held accountable for how they ride their bikes. The man behind it is the man who was dubbed Mr. Loophole. He's a lawyer who's helped a string of celebrities avoid driving offences, but he's concerned about the law on cycling. Nick Freeman joins us, along with Kevin O'Sullivan, the man behind Cycle Legal, a lawyer and a cyclist who set up that firm to represent cyclists who've been injured in accidents. Morning to you both.
Good morning, Nick.
Mr. Freeman, first of all, tell us how it would work.
Well, there would be a similar system to that which operates for motor cars. There'd be each cyclist will be required to wear a registered tabard, a tabard with a registration number on the back, so that if there was an offence, an alleged offence committed, a member of the public will be able to obtain that information and report it to the police. The police will then send out a Section 172 notice, which is the same notice that's sent to a driver, the registered keeper of a motor car, and there will be a legal obligation to furnish information as to who was cycling at the time. And if you fail to furnish, that will be an offence, and it will be an offence that attracts penalty points. So I'm proposing actually one set of rules for all road users, for cars, for e-scooters, and indeed for cyclists.
And why is it needed? Because it's a pretty big intrusion in people's lives. You're popping out to get on your bike for a ride through town before you go into the countryside, or you're popping out to get a bottle of milk, and you say, I've got to put on a tabard with a number.
Well, when you get in your car and pop to the local shops, you have to wear a registration plate. I think it's important.
Not quite the same.
Well, can you imagine a situation where we say to drivers, look, let's discard the registration plates? There will be mayhem on the roads. My view is we're seeing an erosion of motoring lanes. The roads are being eroded, and we're making place for environmental friendly alternative transport such as e-scooters and cyclists, which is welcome. There's a huge growth in these, and in my view they need to be accountable. And if you impose some sort of registration system so that they will be accountable, they will cycle more responsibly. And the idea is to really promote a sort of harmonious, safe environment for all people who use a very limited and very restricted space.
Well, what's wrong with that, Kevin O'Sullivan? What's the problem with that? Because many people will know that cyclists, a growing number of them, do actually put cameras on their bike helmets and so on in order to show what motorists are up to. Why shouldn't we motorists sometimes have a chance to prove what cyclists have been up to?
My main objection to this, Nick, is it would almost certainly drive down rates of cycling. And an idea like this, for me, it misses the big picture. The big picture is rising levels of obesity, diabetes, more cycling rates, cost to the NHS, happier and healthier people, more productive employees with mental health. All of those things, for me, are part of the big picture. And particularly after a pandemic, the government should be a way to encourage cycling, not discourage any form of active travel. So I include walking and running within that.
But do you accept there is a problem? And I should stress I'm a cyclist as well as a motorist. You do see lots of cyclists, don't you think? The rules of the road are not for them.
There's a wonderful legal expression, Nick, called, which I'm sure Nick Freeman will know very well, causative potency, which is a phrase coined by a judge in a case where he's assessing the culpability, the civil culpability of different road users. And the simple meaning of that phrase is larger vehicles, HGVs, buses, coaches and cars can cause enormous damage and do. And I see that on a daily basis to cyclists and pedestrians. And against that, a cyclist can do so little harm to any other road user. In those few cases where irresponsible cycling happens, they're a danger to themselves.
Nick Freeman, do you take that point? A motor vehicle, by definition, is going to do many more people much more damage.
Well, that is such an obvious point. Of course, a cyclist, a motorcyclist, an e-scooterist are much more vulnerable than a car or a lorry. But I think that really misses the point. We all have a responsibility, and unfortunately, we have many cyclists and e-scooters who ride on the pavement, who go through red lights. They're causing thousands and thousands of injuries to pedestrians who need protection. So yes, I accept that there is a pecking order in terms of vulnerability, but there are also pedestrians below cyclists in that pecking order. And
Okay.
I don't think it's helpful to the argument to say, well, look, I'm a cyclist, you're a car, so therefore I don't need to comply with the law. The 1988 road traffic law has cycling laws in place, but they're redundant because, as you've rightly said, Nick, you video someone on a cycle driving dangerously or knocking someone down and they don't stop, and that's what you have. You do it with a car and you have a means of contacting the culprit. So the law is redundant. And if we accept that the law is in situ, and the law does need revamping, it needs bringing up to date without question, we need a system whereby we can enforce that law. And at the moment,
Okay.
you really just can't enforce it. You just look at the statistics, that the tickets that the police issue per year, you can count them on one hand. And there are literally tens of thousands of cyclists every day committing offences for
I'm
which they're
smiling because as
unaccountable
you
for.
said that, I was thinking of counting the number of emails I suspect we're now getting, and tweets as well, reacting to this debate. It's an interesting one. Nick Freeman and Kevin O'Sullivan, thanks for joining us.